The Land and Water UW Extension meeting will come to order. Was the meeting properly noticed?
Yes, it was.
Please rise and we'll handle the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. All right, roll call. We have Supervisor Mons, Supervisor Wimmer, Supervisor McLaughlin, Supervisor Krug, Doreen Olson, and welcome Mary Lou Paler. And Dustin is here. Pat Wagner's here. I am here. Yes. Thank you. We're all present and accounted for. Moving on to approving the agenda. Do I have a motion from Supervisor Mons? Do I have a second? Supervisor McLaughlin, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The agenda is approved. Approving minutes from the July 11th, 2023 meeting. Has everyone had the opportunity to review those minutes? Seeing everybody's fine, do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a second? Did you have a question, Supervisor Mons? No?
No, I thought that the only thing that started at the beginning of the year with minutes.
Oh, yeah, we don't have, if there's no corrections, you're right. Yep, so are there any corrections that anyone noticed that needed to be addressed? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. Is there anyone signed up for public participation?
We have someone for discussion of item 18, would be Jeff.
Sir, could you repeat your last name?
Me?
Yes.
Yeah. He's the chair for Goose Lake.
Okay, thank you. All right, when we get to that item, I'll make sure you're aware. You bet. Is there any correspondence for the committee to consider?
No correspondence.
Okay, may we move on to the project status report? Has everyone been able to access the sheet that applies to the UWX Land and Water? I'm seeing nods. Are there any questions for? Right, both. We're handling both Land and Water and UWX. It's a sheet down at the bottom. So are there any questions for Dustin or Pat? Because you had the sitter one on yours, didn't you, Pat? Yeah. Did anyone have any issues getting into those sheets? Are there any questions? I guess we'll move on. All right, moving on to the purchase, acting and discussing on the purchase of 3 Chevrolet Silverado 1500s. Do we have a motion to approve the purchase of the 3 Chevrolet Silverado 1500 vehicles? First by motion made by Supervisor Mons. Do I have a second by Supervisor Krug? Okay, this is now open for discussion. Supervisor Mons.
Didn't we approve that last? We did not approve
I
that.
think we only approved one, didn't we?
And that was
Yeah.
for. Yeah, I thought it was a SUV, not a truck.
Right.
So that these would be 3 additional besides the SUV.
Kyle, do you want to talk on it?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this would be 3 trucks. So the last meeting, I think it was the last meeting, the Equinox was approved to be purchased. And then the 3 trucks were also in the budget and are waiting for approval.
And again, I'm sorry, they're in the budget already.
Are they in the budget already, Kyle?
Yes, they are, Madam Chair.
And then one other question, these, would there be trading again? And the reason is that these vehicles that are needed would be replacing existing vehicles. You've got that list there, 14, 19, and 21. And did you, in the values you're giving, are there also? No,
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Yes, that was the purchase price of these three vehicles that I have listed there. I put that in there so that way we can just show you how much we had actually paid for the vehicles, and then you can have a little bit of a comparison for the vehicles that are currently being sold on Wisconsin surplus as well.
Doreen?
I guess my only concern is that we're purchasing all of these vehicles all in the same fiscal year. So coming up in the future, we're going to have to essentially replace them again, all in the same fiscal year. Financially, I think it would make sense to stagger them as they were purchased previously.
Kyle, do you wish to discuss anything like that?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, so our plan is to replace vehicles every 2 years. That may be, and that may end up being all the vehicles all in the same year. There are other departments that have vehicles that are getting replaced, probably next year. But we're trying to do it every 2 years, so that way they can hold their value and still have that value when we go to auction them off, and potentially we're able to recoup the vehicles for what we purchased them for.
So my understanding is that we're having troubles finding vehicles, right? That there's some shortage.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I actually just got an update from AF Motors, and they have 5 Chevy Equinoxes coming in, I think today. 2 of them for planning and zoning, 1 of them for maintenance, and then 2 of them for health and human services. So,
Okay. So
that-
those are spoken for though.
Yeah, yeah. And
And-
they have, I'm not sure how many more she told me this morning. They're being built right now.
Okay.
So
All right,
they,
so
they're
we
able to
should-
like track all of that stuff online and see what the status is of the vehicles. So vehicles are getting built now. It's starting to not be so far out from the time that we actually purchase them to when we receive them.
Thank you, Kyle. Doreen, did that answer your concerns? Other than the staggering, which I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think, just my opinion, I would rather have seen them staggered and, but that's just my opinion.
Thank you. Any other, yes, Supervisor Wimmer?
No, Madam Chair, it always seems like we go down the same road here. We get a bid from AF Motors and we get a bid from Napleton, Chevrolet and Columbus. And they're always kind of close, but we always end up back at AF Motors. I just wonder, Napleton seems like they must be like a passive competitor. Do we have to, I'm surprised they even give us bids. And do they have to be Chevrolets? Couldn't they be another brand? Couldn't they be numerous different brands out there? And like I say, we only see one bid from Napleton every time. And of course, AF Motors is always in there, which is our local motor company. I would just wonder if somebody could tell me why it's always the same, always has to be the same brand.
Kyle?
Madam Chair, so we have in our fiscal policies to have a preference for purchasing local. Particularly, it was because of vehicle purchases. We weren't getting prices from the local dealership, which the only local dealership of new vehicles is AF Motors. So that's why we're getting bids on Chevrolet vehicles, because AF Motors is a Chevrolet dealer.
Does that answer your,
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
There's hundreds of dealers in this state. Why is it somebody's preference? It has to be, I mean, so we're stuck with Chevrolets because our local dealer has a Chevrolet dealership. So is that what you're saying? You only have that to compare to?
Madam
Kyle?
Chair,
yes, Kyle?
Napleton is the dealership that was awarded the state contract. So we just get quotes from them because they would give us the state contract pricing. So that's why we get a quote from them each time.
Is there a reason that we don't have a third bidder?
These are the ones that I was struggling to get multiple quotes from, for model year 24 vehicles. But there's nothing in the policy that states that we have to have 3 quotes. And additionally, Napleton was bid out by the state under the state contracts. So the state already essentially did the bidding for us.
What does it say in the policy, Kyle, for how many bids that we need to secure? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
it says 2 formal written bids or proposals for purchases $25,000 or more.
okay. Thank you. Supervisor McLaughlin?
Thank you. I'm just gonna throw something out there, offer out something that when I still worked here, I don't remember how many years, but I purchased our SUVs through Kennedy Ford and, as a Baraboo or wherever. Anyway, when I stopped doing that, the reason was because well, they were more competitive than AF Motors. And I mean, so I went for the cheapest bang. Well, then after some time, it got to be where, well, I still would check with AF Motors. Well, AF Motors, that's what, I don't remember what year it was, but they were turning out a price better than Kennedy did for a Ford. So that's when the relationship started with AF Motors, is because not just because they were local, but also because they became more competitive than the others that I was dealing with.
Thank you, Supervisor McLaughlin. So Kyle, I guess the question is, do you go out and just, area wise? Are we still having AF Motors as competitive as they always have been, I guess? Right? Since we moved away from other dealerships. Do you ever go to other dealerships just to see, just to verify, yep, we're still good. They're still coming in low.
Madam Chair, it's my understanding that the state bids out the contracts every year for vehicles. So the state essentially already does that for us and secures the lowest pricing from responsive bidders.
Okay, so
on vehicles.
Kaneki would have been one of those ones that the state would have already looked at.
Potentially if they were a responsive bidder,
Okay.
because when the state bids it out, a lot of times it's really the major dealers that will bid on those because they have to be able to supply the vehicles to government agencies as well.
Okay. So you do look at a list provided by the state.
Madam Chair, I don't think there's a list on the state website. They have Napleton and Ewald for who was awarded, but the state, I'm sure they would be able to procure something like that of a list
Okay.
of all the responsive vendors.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Doreen.
Not to beat a dead horse, but I would just like to mention that, one of our trucks that we're planning on replacing is almost 10 years old. And I understand that it's in the budget, but just because it's in the budget, do we really need to spend it? Would it make more sense to replace the 2021 truck next year so that we have some alternating vehicles as far as different fiscal years?
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you'd want to replace the 2014 and the 2019, hold on to the 2021?
Yeah, I mean, just because it's in the budget, if it doesn't necessarily really need to be replaced, it's still going to hold its value pretty well next year. Let's push it off fiscally and replace it next year.
Kyle, is it a all-in-one deal or can we pick and choose?
Well, I mean, Madam Chair, the plan was to replace the vehicles every 2 years, and with this one being a 2021,
It's up for
It-
renewal.
Yeah, and that was how we had worked in the capital plan to have vehicles purchased every couple of years, was because we were gonna sell them on Wisconsin surplus and get back most, if not all, of the purchase price of the vehicles. So we would basically just be paying for fuel and maintenance for the vehicles over the life of ownership.
Okay, I saw someone's hand up in the Supervisor Wimmer.
Madam Chair, have we sold any vehicles yet?
Kyle, can you answer to that?
Madam Chair, we have not sold any of the vehicles that we purchased this year yet, as we have not received delivery of the vehicles yet. But
So they have not gone to auction.
no, but historically, as you can see in the memo that I wrote up, the vehicles do go for a considerable amount, depending on year, make, model, and condition as well.
Thank you.
Supervisor Mons?
Is it important that we stay statewide? I mean, are we attempting that? Is there a rule that is done? Because I'll tell you, I'm getting new GMCs for like $38,000 out of a dealership in Illinois.
Kyle,
So the GMC is above a Chevy, but
outside of Wisconsin. Kyle?
yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I mean, we don't have to stay with Chevrolets, I guess. But this is just how we've been handling it in the past because of the local preference for the local dealership.
Thank you.
And,
Supervisor Mons?
just follow up, I can appreciate that.
Hmm.
I mean, but significantly, if these vehicles are 45,000, that's that's a lot on a, it's just a base model, isn't it, Kyle? Just like a construction truck with cruise control and power windows, air conditioning, 8-foot bed, single cab.
Crew cab on them.
Okay, that does make a difference. Excuse me.
So that's the vehicle, Supervisor Mons. So you're saying that you're content with the price?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor? The motion again was to approve the purchase of the 3 Chevrolet Silverado 1500 vehicles. So all in favor, say aye. Any opposed, say nay.
Nay.
2 are nay, that's Doreen and Supervisor Wimmer. The majority has approved the purchase, so the purchase is approved. All right, moving on to, do you need more time to write?
No, we're good.
Okay, moving on to the Area Extension Director Report. Hi, Pat.
Hi, how are you?
Very well. How are you?
Good. So I was just trying to think, we didn't meet last month. That's why my brain was like kind of foggy. So in that time period, something that I was involved in was performance reviews for our educators. So Evan, Sheila, and Angela go through a process called Performance Management Development Program, and just the acronym, right? So anyway, so that was they are all doing very well in their roles, and so I completed that process. Also was in the process of supporting educators county fair wise. Folks are just doing summer programming, keeping busy, and doing a great job of that. And then this morning, Linda and I met with Cynthia and Kyle to go through our budget process. They asked us questions. We had good answers. We're still working on some things and good stuff, right? So they're working on their accounting system, and that's been good for us to learn too. So next month, we'll bring you that budget that's gone to the county administrator for your discussion, and then it'll move on through the process from there. And that's all I have today.
Thank you, Pat.
Mhm.
Any questions for Pat? All right. We will be moving on to the Drainage Board vacancy committee responsibilities. Did everyone see the information that was provided?
And if not, I have some paper copies of these few pages. And so it even was a question this morning. Cynthia was like, drainage board. So drainage board is a responsibility. So does anybody need a paper copy or can you all see it on your iPad?
Everybody okay?
If not, there's one up here. If you look at the bottom of the first page, it talks about the drainage board. So currently there's a drainage board in place, has been functioning well, and Linda received notification that 2 of the individuals will be stepping down. They had indicated that last year, but they stayed with it and now they'll be moving on. Statute says there are several ways that this can happen, but in the end, this committee is one of the ways. It is the way that this county has chosen. So if you want to go back to the bottom of that previous page, right there. So it says that the circuit court, so the judge will actually appoint the people to the board. But this committee in this county has taken the responsibility of, we at the extension office, Linda puts out an advertisement that we pay for with our newspaper publication line item in our budget. And then the individuals who apply them, their names come to this board, and then the board says, yep, send those on to the judge. And then that way the first 2 lines in that highlighted section get completed, that the judge approves those placements. We didn't know if you all were aware of that responsibility because some of you are new to this committee. So we thought it would be appropriate to just give this opportunity to kind of help explain. It helps me understand better. Evan worked through it, I think, once before when he was in his previous role, and Linda's done it several times. So this is purely for information. If anybody has any questions, we can try to answer those. And then as the time comes that the committee actually gets us, yep, we need to get this advertisement placed, then we'll be bringing those names forward to you unless you want to change your process.
So you do not have any names at this time?
No
Okay,
advertisements
this
have been
is
placed.
just educational.
Yep.
To get us up to speed.
Because were you familiar with it before?
No,
All right.
I had heard that we had it,
Mhm.
but yes, I was not aware of the details. Does anyone have any questions for Pat on the drainage board? So Pat, it does say that they don't need to have experience,
Correct.
or one of them does not need to have
There's
experience?
recommendations here on how the individuals can be prepared for their roles.
By and large, do we prefer the experience? I would assume.
That would be great, right?
Okay, all right.
And interest, right? If a person's going to take the role. So I mean, for the most part, drainage, because I work with these in 5 different counties. The drainage board oversees this drainage ditch. And as long as the ditch is doing well, nothing happens. They meet annually. People are invited to an annual meeting. If they determine that, oh gosh, one section of the ditch has caved in, now we must assess a fee. And so then that has to be voted on at the annual meeting. And then it becomes the responsibility of I just listened to this in Green Lake County. So then the county treasurer will have to send out a bill to the people along the drainage ditch to take care of that cost.
So is that like a special charge on
Mhm.
taxes? Okay. I don't know if this is 88.17 in terms of expenses and compensation. It seems like everything is going up in cost. Is $40 still the
That's
agreed upon?
statute, so we don't have anything.
Right,
to do
so,
with
so
that.
they're not changing that, okay, all right. Okay,
Madam Chair.
yes, Doreen.
I was just wondering when the term ends and
So the 2 that are resigning the end of the year. And if you look at the way, so I don't know if do we have the rotation?
No, I don't.
Schedule. There is a secretary, a clerk for the board, and she would have that. She's also leaving that role. So if anybody needs that job. Doreen.
So these are the 1, 2, and 3-year terms?
Right.
Okay. And we don't know which ones are leaving?
Nope.
Okay,
Again, we know that there's somebody leaving and so we can get that detail for you, which will be important.
Okay.
So far, we haven't received.
So there will be a letter sent to the judge which says we resign.
okay,
But I just wanted you all to know that that's going to be something coming to you. And because in Washera County, they were like, what do we do with the drainage board question? And so
okay.
we thought it was better to let you know about it. And if you have more questions as they come, we will get them for you, the answers.
Thank you. I
Mhm.
appreciate it. Anybody else? All right. Thank you very much. Okay, educators report. Are there any questions for the UW Extension staff? And I just have to say, I love the links. thank you for putting those in the reports. Those are awesome. They are really helpful. So, thank you. Okay, anybody with any questions for the staff that make it all the way over here for us? Supervisor Wimmer?
Madam Chair, again, we go back to, harvest of the month and we talk about fruits and vegetables. But, there's, nothing that I see that shows anything about, meat. Cooking meats, how to handle meats, the nutritional value of meats. And I guess I would like to see that as part of it because we have a whole generation of people growing up that only deal with processed meats, what's totally convenient. And we should be teaching people how to handle meat, whether it's pork, poultry, or beef, and how to cook it. And until we can get that into their education, we're going to continue to have people living off of processed meats. I'm not saying we're going to stop it, but if people knew kind of like the timeline and things on learning how to cook meat, I think it would be very advantageous to our growing population, young people particularly.
Thank you, Supervisor Wimmer. Angela, do you want to speak on that? No.
Thanks for your comment, Mr. Wimmer. I do agree with what you're saying. Meat is an important part of the diet. And then for food-wise programming, we do talk about the food groups. So when we talk about protein, we do include all of the foods that are high in protein, and meat is one of the foods that are high in protein, of course. So we cover that with our food-wise lessons when we're out in the schools and seeing our audiences talking about My Plate. Now, for the Harvest of the Month materials, those were created for us to utilize, and the main focus of that campaign is to promote fruits and vegetables that are local.
So Angela, on the food wise, do you go into the preparation of proteins, including meat?
So if we're doing a cooking lesson, we'll show more how to work with whatever ingredients we're using for the recipe. And usually it's ingredients from all of the food groups.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Wimmer, does that answer your concern?
Well, I appreciate that, Angela, but it seems like every time I see this report, I always see fruits and vegetables and I do see protein under there, but, you know, seems to me we could work on that a little bit. Maybe meats are a little harder to educate people with, and they're very perishable. But at some point in time, I would like to see us deal with that. I know as a producer that I never allow my animals go into processed meats. I won't sell them because I really educate people on cooking roasts and that type of thing that provide a lasting meal for more than one sitting. So I don't know where to go with this. Maybe I should discuss it more with Angela and maybe we could come up with something there.
Angela, you had mentioned that the Harvest of the Month is provided, that curriculum is provided to UWX?
Yes, and it's not a curricula, it's materials that we share with the schools and that. One other thing I would add is, you know, the stats that are out there show that most people are lacking in vegetables in their diet. And most people don't have a hard time getting in foods that include protein. So that's where the emphasis is high on vegetables as well, because most people are lacking in that area.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? Go ahead, Supervisor Wimmer.
Yeah, I'm not in a lot of these links. I guess somebody needs to hook me up or I need to figure it out how to get hooked up on this, but I have some questions on some things. I'm glad to see Adam here because I have one thing on here couple things. There was something on grazing.
The ins and the outs, that's
And
that's
I had no
biosecurity.
idea what it was actually talking about. An event for farmers and agricultural professionals where participants learn the dynamics of potassium. No, that's not it.
Drought decisions for cow-calf herds?
No,
Cause you were talking about links, right? He
Yeah.
supplied 3 links.
I guess I would like to see some things more specific. I know we don't have much grazing in Adams County. As a matter of fact, when I started grazing, I think I knew of only one other person, and our county clerk, Liana Glavin, said that she was a grazier, and I never knew that. We've always had a network up in around the Wausau area, and there are a few in the Green Lake area, and I know why. I mean, major potato productions, and now you have a large milk company that's has to tie up a lot of forage. But there doesn't seem to be much of a network. And I would like to see more specifics, and I think I got it here. Potatoes. Okay. An event for farmers, agriculture, and natural resource professionals where participants learn about the role of grasslands in the future of agriculture. Incorporate native grasses, improve wildlife habitat on grazed lands. This effort is designed to use managed grazing as a resilient agriculture practices. Okay, that's all good. I was wondering, that wasn't done in Adams County though, is that correct, Adam?
Thank you, and I can speak to this a little bit. It was an event that was planned before I started. The event happened, I think it was the 21st of July. It was at Signature Farms over in Friendship. They actually have about 120 acres that was converted from vegetable production to grazing operation or growing forages under a pivot in which they put their cow-calf pairs on to graze. And what that event did was, I guess, mimic or put an example out there of what people can do to switch vegetable production over to pasture and management that way in terms of better soil health, but still provide the amount of income that you would get from, say, a vegetable production system. And that wasn't in Natasha's report. It's an event that she held. I think it's, if you scroll up, I think 2 more pages is at the or scroll down, excuse me.
On page 8.
Yep, her first bullet point,
Page
her
8.
report. There it
There
is.
you
Yep,
go.
the first one. So what Supervisor Wimmer was asking about too is some groups. We do work with, I shouldn't say we, Natasha has worked with Golden Sands and they do a lot with grazing. I'm too new to become super familiar with them. But as far as soil health and that kind of stuff, they do grazing events that she has partnered with in the past. But yes, this event did occur in Adams County and it was very well received. I don't have the numbers specifically, but I was there and I can say there's probably 30, 35 people at least that were interested and participated in the event.
I would just like to note, I'd love to have gone, but it was during Fair Week. So if in the future, if we can avoid Fair Week, I know that doesn't encompass everyone, but it does encompass a lot of farm families, so.
Are there any PowerPoints available to some of the material that might be supplied at these events, or?
I am not positive on that. I did take pictures myself. I can include them on the next report and I can also talk to Natasha and see what material she has. Because it was her event. I did participate a little bit, saying some things about, the subject at hand. But I will be in contact with her and we'll include something on the next report as far as pictures or there wasn't a PowerPoint. It was basically kind of like a walk and talk.
Walkthrough, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
But I'm sure she has pictures as well that she could share and maybe share some more about the event too.
okay. Sounds good. Go ahead, Supervisor.
I
Wimmer.
appreciate the staff being here and I appreciate Adam's input. I would like to see more of the staff here at these meetings, because I have some questions and I don't know who to direct them to. I live down near Milk Source, which is a multi cow CAFO, concentrated animal feeding operation. And I have some questions. Who would I direct those to?
Adam, it's either you or Natasha, right? You're doing the grazing.
Yes, so I'm livestock, and what livestock encompasses under UW's I guess system or layout now is I don't do the dairy side of things, so I think he's referring to Newchester, the
Yes.
dairy operation there. I will certainly take the question. I will facilitate it to a professional in the system that would know, unless of course I do myself, growing up on a dairy farm, but I would be more than happy to take any questions as well. And just to regards on the report of the meat too, on the livestock side of things, we do have articles, tabs, maybe not necessarily answering the question that you had proposed earlier, but that talked about, yields of what kind of cuts you get out of, pork, sheep, lamb, beef, all of that. And it does talk about cooking those as well. And UW does have a really good partnership with the Wisconsin Beef Council, which they have all kinds of recipes for cooking, roast, steaks, smoking, and all that kind of stuff. So maybe not totally related to what your question was earlier, but we do have a lot of resources on the UW Livestock page through UW Extension.
So when we're talking dairy, it goes one step outside of Adams County. Now it's more of a regional.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and Pat probably
Okay.
could answer that question specifically, but we don't have a regional educator in dairy in this county or the surrounding counties for that
Okay.
matter.
So if Supervisor Wimmer had questions, it would start at the UW Extension office. and
Sure,
then-
we would work. There's a new system that is being developed. It's right now it's open to the inside, not the outside, because they want to have it fixed the right way. It's like our our gardening question opportunity. So if you have a question, Linda, maybe somebody calls the extension office. Linda's the first line of greeting the public. She might be able to direct them to that ask the agriculture question now. And so then another educator who doesn't work in Adams County would possibly be able to answer a question related to dairy.
Okay.
Yeah, the questions come from a concerned people in my district. And one of them was, does Milk Source, they've heard that Milk Source intends to increase the herd size and who governs that? And the other one is, does Milk Source have a nutrient management plan that's overseen when they were getting ready for the manure season? And this raw manure is going on to people's land, and our neighbors are definitely affected by it. Is there a nutrient management plan in place that they adhere to and that we oversee, or who oversees it?
So hold on, Dustin. Go ahead, Adam.
Again, I'm not an expert in this category, but they are required to have a nutrient management plan since they are a CAFO, and I believe that is over 1,000 animal units, which they well surpass. And as well as your question about expanding that information, I don't know that it's public anymore, but it used to be, and that would be through the DNR, Wisconsin DNR. They have a list of CAFOs, and whether or not they try to expand, they have to have that in the nutrient management plan in order to, I guess, get license or permit for that.
Okay, Dustin, sorry.
The nutrient management plans are reviewed and approved by Land and Water. All the fields that they utilize for spreading have nutrient management plans. That's a good chunk of the ones we do have.
So do you test them to see that they're up to speed on their plans?
There are review. They have mechanisms in place.
Can we verify their soils? That I mean,
Type of
they can
soil,
say
or
they are on a plan, but can we go out and verify whether the soils are indeed managed?
yep. So part of the nutrient management planning is soil testing, and they have that done by outside professional company. I have to get you the exact number, but I believe it's every 4 years.
Supervisor McLaughlin? Thank you, Dustin.
Just to add something to help anybody those good questions that Bill's bringing up. I'm gonna say something that unfortunately is true, but it's not an ideal world we live in. We all know that. When it comes to things like this and many other things similar, the fox is kind of watching the hen house, because the producers are the ones in charge of doing their own, making sure they're meeting the standards they're signed up for. Yeah, the zoning department or so doesn't go out and monitor that. They're supposed to monitor themselves. That's not an ideal system by any stretch, but that's the way it is. Unless I'm wrong, I don't think I am. That's pretty much the way it is.
Dustin, do you wish to speak on that?
Right, so I mean, the nutrient management plans are monitored. And that's where there's a cycle. And like I said, I believe it's 4 years. We get a new updated soil test from whatever consultant that they choose. But they are licensed individuals. Does my staff go out there and do a soil sample? No, but that's why that's why they hire professional individuals. And there are requirements in place, and there are penalties if they don't follow it as well. Most of that comes on the state level, but
Is there software, Snap, right? Or something that,
a couple of different ones, but SNAP is one of them. Yeah.
and that they put in the fertilizers and whatnot concentrations that they're putting on their land?
Yep. And it has to meet certain standards.
Okay. Supervisor Wimmer?
Yeah, just to every 4 years is, well, there's a number of problems with that. Number one, when you're putting raw manure on those lands twice a year, 4 years is not enough to monitor that. But somehow I think we've got to look into that closer, and I don't know, maybe we need to contact the DNR and work with some of our staff here in the county to look into that.
Who did establish the 4-year?
DACAP.
It's DACAP, okay. Okay,
And I can find the state statute or administrative code and get it.
okay. Thank you, Doreen.
I'm just gonna point out a couple of things. First off, raw manure is technically organic fertilizer. So when we talk about going organic, I just want to make sure people know that that's raw manure. And secondly, there's a lot of farms out here that don't have nutrient management plans and don't have any monitoring and such. So when people look at, for example, CAFOs, and want to kind of knock them, at least there is some standards and some way of monitoring them, because there's a lot of farms that don't do any monitoring at all.
Supervisor Krug?
Couple things. So right now it's DACAP 50. That's the administrative code that oversees this program for CAFOs. It is under rule revisement right now. So if anybody wants to make comments on revising the administrative code, I can get that information to them, but
I think it was closed.
it's open till, oh, it was June. You're right. I'm sorry. I was looking
Yeah.
at the wrong thing. But yeah, it just went under a rewrite. But in the meantime, if we need to get more information for a future meeting, can we add that to another agenda item for another meeting and get back on to our agenda for today?
Certainly.
Thank you.
All right. Moving right along. Anything else? All right. Thank you all for coming, making the trip over.
No worries.
Financial report, though, hold on. Did everyone have the opportunity to review the financials? And are there any questions before they head out? Particularly Pat? Nope. Okay, we're good. Thank you. All right. Moving on to land and water. There were 2 staff reports connected, one under each underlining. Land and water had the July.
Yep.
And then the report, the next one is the next date. So hopefully people caught that. Are there any questions for land and water staff? I don't know if we have any online, actually, do we? No. So if you do have staff questions, Dustin, you'll take that back to your, okay. Is there any questions for Dustin on the reports? Looks like the drone is getting used.
Yes, it is. Did
That's
you see
awesome.
the photo at the very
Yeah.
end of that?
Yeah,
It's a impressive camera.
yeah. Where is that, Dustin?
I knew you were gonna. get that too.
Sorry.
I think it said it right above the. I mean, if you keep in the paragraph, I thought,
There were a couple ones that were specified, but
and I was thinking it was that bottom one, but it doesn't actually say, does it?
no.
I can get that for you.
I think right below the picture, there's the flight log.
Yeah.
And I
go
can't
down.
read the writing below it, but I think I see Garden Avenue, maybe
Golden-
Wisconsin
Golden
Avenue.
Yep, Golden Avenue.
Golden, okay.
Yep,
So that would be down by like Lake Mason
right.
or in that general area.
Excellent. Yeah. Anything else that anyone wants to bring up that was in the report? We do want to talk about the upcoming meeting in Green Lake. Kiefer has to have registration in by September 8th. So if anyone from the committee wishes to go, I believe it's September 14th or is it 15th?
I have 15th on the staff report, but
Okay. I think it is. I think it's a Friday. Yeah. And it's in the morning. If someone would be inclined to go, they would meet here. And I'm assuming it's just Kiefer going from the department or, okay. Kiefer is the secretary. And so, he would encourage attendance. I don't know if there are any committee members that are interested in going. I usually go. I'm not sure yet if I can go. So,
That's in Green Lake.
yes,
You have to know by when.
he needs to register by September 8th. Yep. Should we just have, individuals call Kiefer? Okay, so call the Land and Water Department and talk to Kiefer. Supervisor Wimmer, you went to a Winnebago one, which I thought was quite informative. So how many people can go, Dustin?
I can do a few.
Okay, 3,
Well, I hate to say a set number and discourage somebody from going.
okay. It's not like we're forming a quorum or anything, because this is a presentation and whatnot, so.
It's just that you go for a ride. If somebody go.
Well, no, because I mean, I guess car sharing is one part of it, but any budgetary things, I mean, I can.
If
absorb
we
some.
had more members of the committee, then, you know, that push us towards the quorum number, would we divide into 2 vehicles?
I would think that would be the smart way to go.
Just don't talk. You can
Yeah.
You could just,
take a bus if you want.
we just
All
We
right.
just can't talk politically. So anyways, keep that in mind. Let Kiefer know, and I'm sure I'll be in contact with Dustin or Kiefer. And we'll get that going. So, okay, any questions from the staff report? All right, I'm not seeing any. Dustin, staffing, you had mentioned we have a new member
Yep.
coming, and where does that go for Chapter 92 in terms of funding? I sent that out too. I don't know if everyone saw that in their email. I gave you a link.
Yep, so the gentleman does start on the 12th, and gonna be a great addition. I don't want to jinx it, give it, saying the name or anything, but I think he's gonna be a huge asset to the department. The funding, as far as what you're referring to with 100%, 70%, 50%, it would be one of the ones that could potentially be eligible for the 100%. What that comes down to is what the actual expenses are at the end. So for a number of years, Chuck has actually been the one that qualifies for, or that we put as the 100%, because between benefits and how long he's been here, he actually made more than the other positions. And you always put your highest position in that. Or,
So it doesn't have to be a county con.
no, actually, and I believe anybody in that works with resources in land and water can qualify for that grant. But when you put it in, you take your highest for the 100 and so forth. And that's something that Kyle and I do every year when we submit the grant reimbursement. We have to put in this year for what we think next year will be, but then if you happen to have, for example, Carolyn left, well, we're not going to use that position because it was only half used or partially used. So we're going to use a different position to try to
Get those funds.
maximize what we receive.
Okay.
I hope I explained that well, and Kyle can probably explain it better than I just did, but
Kyle, do you want to weigh in? No. County Manager Hager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So how it works with DATCAP, we have our that funding source is that there's a certain prescribed number. So let's say 140,000 kind of sticks in my head. We'll say about 140,000. Okay. And then what we do is we take the highest paid in that area and it starts using up that amount. Once you hit the 140,000, you could have 200,000 in expenses for personnel, but you're only going to get the 140,000. So that's where Dustin's talking about, yes, someone left, there was a gap there, so we fill it with somebody else. We have plenty of personnel to absorb all of that funding source.
Okay. Any questions? And you said the gentleman starting on the 12th?
Monday, so is that?
That's the 11th. I believe.
I'm sorry, it's the 12th, Tuesday.
Okay. Any way that the individual could attend our next meeting and introduce themselves and give us a little,
Yep, the plan actually is, he will be attending all meetings. So he will definitely be here on the first one, but it won't be for a couple weeks after.
Yep.
He'll have a couple of weeks to get his, feet wet.
okay, all right, sounds great. Anything else? All right. Dams report.
All right, so the biggest thing on the dams right now, as I've been saying over the summer, I guess there's two things. We've been working on getting all the water level monitoring stations up and running. We're doing really good. We have one that we're still working on right now. And then another one that we actually have to install from scratch that we have not started yet. The data we're getting is actually really good. And coincidentally, the other part of what the other important thing is that there's going to be a lot of activity up in the Roche Creek at that dam. As I've said before, we had an issue with the boil, water coming up through the concrete out of a hole. And the original plan was, well, have somebody go in and fix the concrete wall. In the meantime, more issues. Now there's air coming up out of the concrete also, which really concerns the DNR and myself and the engineers. So between the three of us, we had to come up with a plan of action on what we're gonna do to take care of this. It's not like imminent, life threatening, but we need to figure it out before we put money into fixing it, what exactly is going on. So we did hire Ayers and Associates, and they put together a whole plan. That plan kicks off tomorrow morning with the dive team. There will be monitoring wells going in along near the dam. And this is a pretty extensive investigation going on. The idea is when it's done, we know what's actually causing any of the issues in the dam. Put together the bid for, or proposal for how to fix it. The municipal dam grant cycle kicks off on January 1st. It's an every 2-year type thing. We have had success with that grant in the past prior to me. But Ayers and Associates, part of this investigation contract, will also write the grant for that. And they feel confident, and then also the DNR has been involved in this whole process as well. My understanding is, so we can't do any of the repair work prior to getting the grant, because you can't go retroactive with that. However, the investigation funds that we're using right now, even though that's outside of the cycle, you can go retroactive, and we could potentially get those back.
Okay.
It is a competitive grant, so we may not get anything either, but it'll be interesting to see what this investigation warrants.
And Ayers is going to be the grant writer,
Yes,
did you say? Okay.
they do one of the reasons we go with them. I mean, they very, very experienced in dams, and they do our annual reporting or engineer compliance checks. And they've done these municipal, I'd have to double check, but I believe they wrote the grant the last time Adams County was awarded one.
What kind of price is the investigation?
Approximately 160,000.
That's just the investigation?
Yep.
Okay. Any questions? For Dustin on the dams? All right, seeing none, thank you. County Forest Report.
About the only, I guess, two parts is, the original plan was to be on joint finance for the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Fund, in September. We have not gotten a counter offer or an accepted offer on the purchase yet. And offer to purchase, excuse me. And one of the things that the DNR needs before they can send it to joint finance is a title commitment, which we can't really do until we know we're buying it or have come to an agreement.
Right.
So it's held off until that happens. But all the paperwork's ready. It's ready to go, and for the DNR to hand over to joint finance, but without that piece, we can't. But so it's kind of just, we're right now waiting for counter offer or acceptance of offer.
Okay, Supervisor Mons?
When you make a real estate contract, don't they include a date by response required?
Generally, yes, when you're and it hasn't been all that long by the time we've gone through this, Corp Council, had to write the offer. It's still, they're well within time yet though. And I don't remember because you can change that number of days in the contract, and I don't remember what Jeff put in for a number.
Do we anticipate any delay due to reevaluations going on in the county?
I guess I don't anticipate anything. I mean, they know what they want for it, and we know what we're willing to offer.
Okay.
Or what we did offer, I guess is a better way to put that.
Tom of Easton was surprised. I just want to just put that out there. So yeah, okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Doreen. FSA report. No, I have Lake Alliance after that. Oh, shoot. Okay, I swapped. Okay. Number 18 is Lake Alliance report, and we have some public participation. Do you wish to have the report gone through first and then have? It's up to you guys.
Unless anybody has any questions, the only addendum I have to, been submitted is I have received all 4 coupons. I've got the rest of them left. And Peter has a copy.
How are they looking, Bill?
I've had the least, lowest number, both nights have the terms of knowing that they really have to get with the keep on that.
It's amazing. They can give you numbers, but they're not going to interpret it for you. Can you keep us posted on that? And you too, Mary Lou? Okay. All right. All right. You come on up. Wherever you're comfortable. As long as you don't leave the room. I think it's on. It looks like there's a green light. Isn't that a green light? Yeah, it's on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So my name's Jeff Spitzer-Resnick. I live in the town of Jackson. I've been the chair of the Goose Lake Watershed District for quite a long time. Earlier this summer, one of our neighbors, who's very active in the district, discovered that, well, he heard a sound down by the boat landing. There's a public boat landing. And that mean an unusual sound, not just a boat going in. So he went over there and there's this big tanker truck with big, what is that, about 4-inch pipe sucking water out of the lake. So he decided to ask him what's going on. He said, well, we're filling up the truck and taking it over to, you've probably heard about the new Emmerich Lake Campground. It's going to be the largest RV campground, or at least they say, in Wisconsin, to build our roads. Okay. So he gets that was a construction guy, his company's name, and calls me. I get on the phone with DNR only to discover, and maybe you know this, I didn't, that state law says that anyone, you, me, anybody, could be from, I don't know, Czech Republic, can come and take up to 2 million gallons per day out of virtually any body of water in the state. Class A trout streams, I believe, are the one exception, without a permit. Because I was calling DNR to say, can I see the permit? I want to know what's going on. How much are they going to take out? Blah, 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 blah. There's no record of it because there's no permit, because they weren't going to take over 2 million gallons a day. Conveniently, we had a watershed district meeting coming up that weekend. So we decided to pass a very simple ordinance that said, you can't take out more than 100 gallons a day without our permission. I'm not banning it, but you got to talk to us. So like 5 years ago, we would have said, please take as much water as you want. We're flooded, you know. Right now, we're 2 feet down. And I don't know. I sent a copy of the ordinance, and I sent a cease and desist to both the construction company and the Emmerich Lake Campground, who have at this moment continued. They simply haven't responded. Now, why am I here? Good news and bad news. Good news is they haven't come back to Goose Lake. That's good news. Bad news is they just went to another lake. So in talking to Corp Counsel about this, I also found out, I called the sheriff and found out from not the sheriff, but the sheriff's office, that they don't enforce local ordinances. So we're like tiny, you know, we have a budget of about $20,000 a year. So we don't have a lot of power to enforce our own ordinance. I was hoping the sheriff would, they won't. And then when I found out, well, okay, they're just going to go to another lake. And remember what state law says. I called Corp Counsel. He said, well, have you thought about a countywide ordinance? And, you know, thinking what the sheriff said, well, if it's county ordinance, we can enforce it. And talked to Bill, who's my county supervisor, talked to other Bill Pegler. Lakes Alliance discussed it. They thought it was a good idea with one addition. we didn't, and honestly, we didn't even think about the possibility of public use. In other words, the county needs it or the town needs it to do some road work. And, I still think it's worth discussion. Okay, how much water do you need? How big is the lake? Are we in a flood year, a drought year, whatever? But obviously for public purpose, if it's for a public purpose, that makes sense. So I'm here to encourage this committee first, and I assume ultimately if this committee agrees, and I know we don't have a formal agenda item, so it's not going to be voted on today. I'd be glad to come back or consult with Bill or whomever else later. And I can leave you a copy of our agenda, our ordinance, to encourage Adams County to do essentially what we did with, the possible addition, like the Lakes Alliance thought of permitting public purpose. But I would say if there's a watershed district, at least notify the watershed district so they know what's going on. Let's protect our water, from, again, private business. And ironically, remember, this is Emmerich Lake Campground. They chose not to take their own water. Let's just go take somebody else's lake. So that's why I'm here. Any questions or comments or? All right, thanks a lot.
Actually, I do have one question. I better turn my mic on. You're working with Corp Counsel Hayes?
Yeah.
Okay, and we don't have any problem with a county ordinance nixing what the state is telling us that,
That is a good question.
okay?
So when he and I first discussed it, he of course raised the same question. There is basically, and I happen to be a lawyer. This isn't my field of expertise, but I did look at the laws. That's how I found out about the 2 million gallon rule and all that. There is one case, I don't remember the name of the watershed district, and it's interesting you were talking about CAFOs before. If you know CAFOs, they take a lot of water too. And they tried to protect their groundwater by limiting what the CAFO could take. The Court of Appeals said, no, that CAFO's already received permit from the state, et cetera, and there's state law on that. So Corp Counsel was saying, well, doesn't that restrict it? My response was different statute. I can't say yes or no. What I will say though, and I think it would be good to have Corp Counsel, weigh in formally on this, is that look at what Little Goose Lake Watershed District did by passing a very simple ordinance. Those guys were coming back. They were planning on taking all their water out of our lake. So I'm really pleased I protected our water, but I like to think that I'm bigger than that. And I don't really want to win by having somebody else lose, if you will. So I think if Adams County wants to protect, it's like, why not pass the ordinance? It can always decide later if for whatever reason, they hire some big law firm and want to sue the county, and it's then going to be the county's decision. Are we going to fight this and spend money on legal fees or keep our Corp Counsel very busy or whatever? My vote, if you will, and I know I don't have one, but as a citizen, would be start with protecting the lakes. And, there's nothing that will compel the county to, take on a big legal fight, but it could choose to if it wants to. There is no case law on this particular. And it's weird because the state doesn't really say, the law doesn't say exactly what I said. It doesn't say you can take up to 2 million gallons. It just says you need a permit if you want to take up to over 2 million gallons. So there's what I would call an implied permission, but there's nothing in the law that says anyone who wants to, for any reason at all, without restriction, can just go take 2 million gallons a day out of any water. When you think about it, honestly, I don't think they really thought through it. We all know there's some little lakes out there. And if you took 2 million gallons a day out of some lakes, you just dry them up. There's some huge lakes out there and they're deep, and probably it's not a big deal if you took 2 million gallons out. But there's no guidance, there's no DNR regulations, nothing. And that's the reason why I think this could stand muster. It would be different if there was like a very detailed statute, here's when you can take, here's when you can't take, here's regulations on it, then I think the county would have a problem asserting something different legally.
Okay.
Anything else?
No.
Oh, looks like-
My only other thought is, as far as fire protection and suppression, having something in there for wording, or maybe there's already something separate that's state law. But, you know, for fighting fires or something like that, I would think that we would want to include some wording if we decide to go that route of having an ordinance.
Yeah, and I would, of course, totally agree with that. Nobody wants in an emergency to see something burn because they got to go get permission from somebody. 100% agree on that.
Terrific.
Yeah. Anybody who thinks about it would, right? And one would like to think, I mean, when I tell people, just like the average person, did you know that anyone can just go take 2 million gallons a day out of a lake without asking anybody for permission? Most people are pretty stunned by that.
I was.
Yeah. All right.
So,
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
So I think maybe next month on our agenda, we should have Corp Council come and do, okay. Go ahead, Supervisor Mons.
Where's that gonna fall?
I would assume that's just gonna be an agenda item next month.
And in 15 to 23? That's what I was gonna, question's gonna ask, where on the agenda is that gonna fall and how will that be worded?
That'll be figured out when the agenda gets created.
You do the agenda or,
I help with it, yeah.
very good.
I approve it. So, thank you. Yes, if you can come next month, I'll make sure that this gets on the agenda. Okay, now, Doreen.
You did catch me off surprise. I'm like, I didn't think it was me. Okay, so just a couple of things. We did not have a meeting, an FSA meeting, between the last one and this one. Just a couple of notes. The majority of Adams County is still in extreme drought. And I heard from someone else, but I would recommend anybody check with the FSA office to be certain that CRP land can be harvested for forage for animals. So generally CRP land cannot, you know, that's, you just essentially let it fallow and you don't harvest it.
Can you explain that acronym, CRP?
I knew someone was gonna ask me that. I don't know the acronym. It's, I wanna say something like Conservation Reserve Program. Yeah, I've just always known it to be CRP. So if there is someone that has CRP land, they can harvest it, or if you have a neighbor or somebody, you can, but I would just double check with the FSA office because I did hear this secondhand. The only other point that I would like to make note of is that Act 32 passed, and someone might have gotten, I got it through email and passed it along to the FSA office. And what Act 32 is, it removes the requirement to appoint an FSA member to this committee, okay? It replaces it with a requirement to appoint a person who is engaged in agricultural use. And the general description of agricultural use is defined as someone that has crop or forage production, beekeeping, keeping livestock, nursery, sod, or Christmas tree production, floricultural, aquacultural, fur farming, and forest management. This takes effect into the next cycle, which is in 2024. And so when I pass this on to the FSA, and we're going to talk about it at our next meeting, and how she responded back to me was that it'll be interesting to see how counties respond to it and how they deal with it. And I thought a lot about this, and I guess my thought is, and maybe we take action after the next meeting, but my next FSA meeting. And my thought is we may need to be proactive. And the only reason why I say that is to define what this committee will do in future as far as choosing someone. Would you, prefer it to be someone that is on the FSA board? And if no one is willing, then how do you go about doing it? And the only reason why I say this is, I just think of future or past, how we get buddies and, oh, I'll have my neighbor or my brother, that kind of stuff. I would like to see that stay away from this committee to keep it true and constructive. So that may be something we might want to discuss here in the winter months, how we want to fill this position. So.
Thank you. Any questions for Doreen? Supervisor Krug.
Just follow up on the bill. I remember being in committee listening to testimony on the bill when it came forward, and it was just, a lot of it is just a little bit of confusion from, USDA and how they've classified how FSA reps can interact and represent. And it's a little bit of a terminology issue more than anything else. But yeah, Doreen's right. We should clarify it a little bit more as we go into the winter months, and maybe FSA and USDA and USAG figure out their terminology and who can represent and how FSA members can interact and things like that. So nothing nefarious, but it does need more definition at our level.
I think how it came about was that as an we are appointed, an FSA member has to be appointed, yet we are not representing FSA.
Yeah.
And that's where the confusion comes in. And really, there should be someone from agricultural on here. And there's lots of routes to go about trying to find, someone, you could go like a recommendation from Farm Bureau. You could do, still try to keep an FSA member on, just someone that's engaged in the community and people know they can go to that person if they have questions or comments and stuff. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Moving on to the DAT cap report. That's old news, but we put it in there because we had no meeting last month. I don't know if anyone had the opportunity because it was very recently linked as of today to the agenda. So, and that's how I understood the ATCP 50 was already closed for comment. The swarm funding, can you talk on that at all, Dustin? Because we rely on that to help out people in the community, correct?
No, so the swarm funding, well, I mean, I guess it does help people in the community, but not what you're referring to.
Okay.
The swarm funding is what I was talking about before with the 170.
Right.
That's what that part of it's used for.
Okay.
It's the staffing grant
Okay.
you're referring to.
Because I was thinking it was the practices, it's structural practices. So when we in the department cost share?
Yep. So those are, I guess there's two components to it as best way. The swarm is the staffing grant. And then there's also the bond and seg funding, which is when we would help do the cost share projects like you were talking.
Okay.
Erosion issues, those types. Barnyard runoff issues. That's a lot of what Chuck works on a, everyday basis.
Okay.
He's the one that the vast majority, well, I guess all of them are engineered to certain standards. And Chuck is the one that makes sure they meet those standards and then gets it approved by DATCAP.
So when it says that the GPR funds can only be used on structural practices due to the wording in the budget, is that going to impact the department in how they move forward with cost sharing? I would assume it would, but I don't know if you guys are already looking at that and.
I don't know the answer to that yet.
Okay.
I'd have to believe it will affect it, but I don't know to what extent yet.
Can you keep us posted?
No.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for the DATCAP? As soon as I get a new report, I'll send it out. Yes, Supervisor Krug.
Just for other supervisors, if there's one thing you do look at in detail on the agenda today. I mean, this is a really good DATCAP update that we've got based on all the things that happened with legislation, things that happened in the state budget, from nitrogen optimization program to the cover crop program, and all the things that were done in Madison in the last 3 months because of budget and bills. This is actually a really good recap of all the things that we did. So the SWRM money is more now, it's funded on general purpose revenue than it was just a seg fund. So it doesn't change the program a whole lot, it just comes out of the surplus that we had. So we're not borrowing to do these projects anymore, we're paying cash for them. So it won't change things too much there. But just, you'll see at the end of it, even the legislation updates at the bottom. And just like we talked about when, we talked with Doreen and the bill just got done. We also did the producer-led bill that'll change how we can use producer-led money. A lot of the farmland preservation stuff was updated, so tons of things changed in the last 3 months in funding. So just go through that one a little bit more so you're prepared to hear more about them in the next few months.
And I know I'm probably saying stuff that everybody already knows, but you do know that when you go into these attached reports, you click on the underlined blue link and that'll take you to the documentation for reading purposes. So Melissa, can you just show an example? So just click on, there you go. So what that'll do is it'll open up another window. Now you can read what you want to read. You go backwards and you'll go back to your document. Does anyone need to see that again? Okay, I just wanted to make sure because a lot of times I think there's a little confusion as to, well, what's included. I guess I don't see it all in detail. It is, you just have to click on it. So you can get to the bills, the legislation that Supervisor Krug was alluding to. Okay. All right. Okay, so that's DATCAP. Thank you, Supervisor Krug. Financial reports. The financials were attached. Are there any questions? No. Okay. All right, moving on. Next meeting date, Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023 at 1 p.m. unless we have any problems with that. Looking good. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. The GPR.
Yes.
So it is